Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. It's our inaugural listener questions episode. We've done listener questions in the past, but never done a standalone episode. So welcome to it if you're joining us live. Hope you enjoy it if you're listening to it after the fact. I am Anthony Cosenza, and as usual, I am joined by my co-host, John Sheeran. John, happy Friday to you.
Yeah, happy Friday to you. I see a little more natural light in your humble abode there. It must be noon out there, I think.
Yeah. And just before I took the air, you saw me mowing down some food. So, lunchtime for me. But I appreciate you, making the time for this. And we're going to dive right into some questions. We've already got some via Twitter. We've had some via email. We've had some via text and call. So we're going to get to all of those. You can have yours heard on the air, or you can have yours heard on the air by doing the live YouTube chat. You can leave it there. You can get in touch with us, 949-542-6241, call or text. You can leave them in the Cincy Jungle comment thread. This is going live on cincyjungle.com as well. So leave it there, and we will get to your questions. If for some reason we do not get to your questions, keep it to cincyjungle.com. We're going to try and get to the rest that we don't get to in a mailbag post. So check that out. And John, just like that, we've already got someone on the line. I believe it's Wayne. Wayne, are you there? This is the Orange and Black Insider.
Yes, I am here calling from Cleveland.
Oh boy. Okay. What's on your mind this week?
Let's talk about the ball distribution after Boyd and Green. How do you see that playing out between Eifert, Uzomah, Mixon, Ross, and whoever, Erickson, Tate, whatever?
We're going to take your question off the air. Thanks for calling in, Wayne. Don't be a stranger, man. Hopefully you call in again soon, and hopefully we give you some sort of answer you're looking for. Appreciate the question. That's a good question, too. So that's Wayne from Cleveland. I'm sure it's an interesting time in his town. That's an interesting question because this is going to be kind of a point of debate because of the new Zach Taylor offense, John. So how do you foresee that kind of going? If you have a percentage split too, I'm sure we'd love to hear it, but it might be a little early for that.
Yeah, it's not even June yet. I'm gonna leave out the percentages until we get closer there. But I think the plan would always be, as long as Tyler Eifert's here, he would always be like that third option because he's not exactly a pure tight end. He's more of just a big slot receiver, and I think he's by far the second or third most talented receiver they have. But of course, the answer to this question and just this overall question, it always varies, and it will always be different once the season comes out because of injuries and because of the roles changing as well. So I think the plan should be Eifert, and after that, then you gradually go into Ross, then Erickson, and obviously, and then you have Uzomah probably in between both of those guys. So I think in that general order, I think it's the plan, but obviously you can never count on Eifert's health. So, I think the plan would be Eifert, but I don't think he's going to end up being that unless he proves he can stay healthy.
Yeah, and I also think it has to do, it's formation dependent and situation dependent, right? I mean, I think we know Green's kind of the do-it-all guy. Boyd is a guy that'll move the sticks. He's becoming more of a do-it-all guy, but he is kind of those the more of the tough catch, move the sticks, shorter yardage, intermediate routes. Where I think you're right about Eifert kind of being, maybe number 2, number 3 in the pecking order. But I think that is also, I think where he's really going to be used heavily is going to be in the red zone. I think that's his forte, and I think that's where you're going to see a lot of usage for Eifert. And I do think, unfortunately, I think there's going to be a little bit of a pitch count there because I think they want to have him healthy. They'd rather have him around and maybe limit his have him around longer and limit his snaps than, have him for 4 games and be gone again, potentially. So, I think Eifert's going to be definitely in the upper mix of things, but I think it's going to be more in the red zone. I think the Bengals are trusting guys like Boyd, Uzomah, and I also thought Wayne brought an interesting point up about Erickson. I think Erickson apparently there were some trade offers for Erickson, and the Bengals were unwilling to part with him, so he could see an increase in snaps on offense as well. Going to our emails, John, there was one from Chris Priest. And And I thought this was a good one too, because it says, what's the buzz in OTAs about the defensive scheme, and what do the players think about it? We hear a ton about how great the offense is/will be, but I'm really concerned about Lou Anarumo being an unproven defensive coordinator with what happened last year.
Yeah, that's a fair concern, because just like Taylor, has little to no experience as a play caller in the NFL. I think the one thing that we've heard, though, is that of how different in a more positive sense from Terrell Austin, because players, I think, according to Jeff Hobson of Bengals.com, they were uncomfortable, they were tentative, they were just unsure about their assignments. There's just a lot of miscommunication with that. And I think the biggest difference it's just more simplified and more playing to the player's strengths. And that I kind of paused with that, because you kind of heard similar things last year about the offense with Bill Lazor. I remember specifically there was an article on The Athletic by how similar it was to the Eric or Coryell system, where all the route combinations were just based off numbers, and it was very easy to communicate in that sense. So as long as it's not bland and easy to pick apart, I think it should benefit, especially the young players, to pick it up more quickly. Because I know William Jackson had trouble last year with the scheme. The linebackers had immense trouble with the scheme last year. So simplified is definitely better in a football sense, but as long as it's not too simplified where it can't get figured out in a couple of weeks, because defense production and efficiency is so volatile in the NFL, and it's hard to sustain that success. But if they can find a way to maximize those strengths, I think they should be on the right path, and hopefully they are, because they definitely need to be a lot better on defense this year.
Yeah, and I think it's, as odd as it's going to sound saying it out loud, I think there's going to be a mix on defense in terms of there needs to be the simplification of things. I think they were thrown too many. They were trying to do too many different things all in one game or one couple of games, and guys were confused, and it just obviously you saw it on the field. They just were out of position a lot, and it showed. It hurt them. Especially against the higher quality offenses. So I think there is going to be a simplification of a lot of things, but I also think there's going to be some, according to Anarumo, there's going to be some mix up of looks that we haven't really seen too often. I think there's going to be lesser linebackers on the field. Maybe that's why they only used, basically two draft picks and re-signed one guy. I guess that's 3 players. So it's not just, but I mean, they got rid of Burfict and they're making some changes there, but you would have thought they would have maybe done even more than that, and they didn't. So I think maybe you're going to see more defensive back heavy schemes. That's why Denard and BW Webb were brought in. And I think, you may see some 3-man fronts, 5-man fronts. I think they're just going to do some different things. But I think they are going to I think they're going to most of what they run will be a little bit more simplified than it was under Terrell Austin, because that was just an absolute disaster under him. So in the live YouTube chat, and this person is in the live YouTube chat as well as leaving a question for us in the Cincy Jungle thread. I think it's Lil AJ 18. Who are your favorite rookies this year, one on offense and on defense, and why?
All right. Favorite rookies definitely on offense is Jonah Williams, just because he's a great prospect. He's going to play immediately, and we're going to get to see how well his game translates as a rookie, because rookie offensive linemen succeeding early is a rare thing in the NFL, and typically only first rounders are the guys who do it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Favorite rookie on defense? I'll go with Pratt, because he was another one of my favorites, and maybe my favorite draft pick of the entire draft outside of the first round. He's also going to play early. I love his skill set. I love what he brings as a weak side linebacker, as a pursuit linebacker. I think if you're looking at guys who can replace what Burfict brought on his best days, Pratt was one of the best guys for them to draft. So it's kind of a boring answer, but those 3 just come to mind because they're going to play early, and we're going to get to see the early dividends of those picks.
Well, you call it a boring answer. I call it the smart answer, and I'm going to go a route that maybe isn't as smart, because to me this is dependent upon what you're actually asking. I think where you're going, and it's probably the right way and how this person meant it, but it's who are your favorite rookies on offense and defense because of their potential impacts on day one, and those 2 guys easily they should be starting, and they should be improvements where they're starting. So, obviously those 2 make a difference. I mean, for me though, I look at potential, and I look at maybe a little bit of backstory for a couple of guys on offense. I like the Rodney Anderson pick a lot. Now, it may be a red shirt year. It may be a guy that, maybe doesn't really even, aside from the rehabbing of the injury, he's down on the pecking order, so he may not even contribute much in 2019. But I think he would have been. I mean, there was talk that he would have been one of the top running backs in this class had he been healthy. He has explosion. He has, he can catch the ball well. I think that's a diamond in the rough, so to speak, and the Bengals got a steal with him as Giovanni Bernard potentially moves on from the team after this year. Maybe he's a guy who figures to have a more prominent role. I think Travion Williams is an interesting guy because of his potential scheme fit and familiarity with what Jim Turner likes to do with the offensive line. But I think Rodney Anderson on offense has a little more upside, and we got to be patient with him, I think. But in terms of my favorite pick, I think value, potential, and kind of a surprise. After they grabbed another running back, they went and got another one. So interesting guy there to me. And I don't know that he'll ever amount to much in terms of a pro, in terms of a starter or anything like that. But I guess on defense, I'm going to go Deshaun Davis simply because of the story behind him. He's kind of the old school mold. He didn't test overly well. The chips are stacked against him as a pro to be, a real, a guy that's going to contribute at a high level. But for me, you look back to some of the stories you hear about this kid. He was around a lot of troubled people in his life. And I think a middle school teacher told him basically by the age of 18, you'll be in jail or dead. And now here he is. I think he has his degree from Auburn, and he's playing professional football. And he may be nothing more than a special teams guy for the Bengals for a couple of years, but even so, that's pretty cool. So to me, those are for differing reasons. I like the guys you mentioned, obviously for on-field reasons, but for some other reasons, I like those too.
I'm surprised neither of us said Drew Sample, aka the greatest tight end who's ever existed.
Yeah, I think if a member of the Bengals coaching staff was on this program today, they would probably note that. So this is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast. John Sheeran over there, Anthony Cosenza here, and we are going through some listener questions. We used to do these at the end of our weekly standard show, but we've decided that shows are going a little too long, and we want to keep bringing you new content, and we want to have you continue to have a voice on this program. So we thought we'd give you a specific platform to do that. If we don't get to your question today, we're going to try and get to a lot of them. If we don't get to those, we're going to try and put those in a mailbag segment on cincyjungle.com. So check that out, and we'll try and get to as many as we can today. We are still taking texts and calls, 949-542-6241, or you can get at us in the live YouTube chat or the Cincy Jungle comment threads. We don't know exactly if this is going to be a standard Friday afternoon thing going forward. We'll definitely keep you in mind. We've already got a lot of people interested, so we will definitely keep you updated. We've got another call on the line, so we're going to get to that here in just a second. John, let me grab this for us.
I really hope we get to some of these questions. Some of these are juicy.
Hey, this is the Orange and Black Insider. Who's this?
Hey, how you doing? It's Terrell.
Terrell, what's going on, man? You made it to the other show. How you doing?
Yeah, how you doing? Yeah, just been just keep tabs on all y'all. Just every show. Just I've just been hearing about. I guess it's kind of about the news that we getting in talks with A.J. about expansion. And I was saying I think he's doing a good job. Just staying loyal to the team, and he might end up being like a Megatron and just stay with the team, stay with his first team, and retire here. I hope so, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
And I know we just signed Mike Family, and this basically is like the big play season for Dalton, and we try to get Justin Hilbert or like a tool next year, but I still think that we still got a good quarterback in Andy Dalton, but we'll just see how the tempo goes, and just how the whole thing on it. And I don't know if you talked about the Gerald McCoy, but I guess he with the Ravens now.
He was visiting them. I have not admittedly before we took the air, I did not hear much. I think he's visiting the Panthers as of today. Terrell, we're gonna answer your questions off the air. Thanks for calling in, man. Good to hear from you again. So there's a couple things there, and I'm going to save the Dalton thing for last, John, if you don't mind, because there are some other questions we received that can kind of tie into that. The first thing, and I think I saw some rumblings of it before we took the air, I think, did the Bengals make it known that they are working on extensions publicly now for A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd?
A friend of the show, Ace Boogie, made it known that they are currently in talks right now. He has his own little breaking news on his YouTube channel, New Stripe City. So yeah, that was something that he dropped on the timeline not too long ago.
Yeah, I saw that's who I saw break it. And obviously for those,
I don't think it's official, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I think if anything, it was mentioned through Bengals.com. Jeff Hobson said something about, they were talking about the Gerald McCoy thing, and I think, of course, and I love Jeff Hobson, but of course he's the cold water bucket guy. Right. He kind of said, not at the expense, Gerald McCoy, they're interested if the price is right and all that kind of stuff, but not at the expense of potentially Boyd and or Green. I get it, but at the same time, other teams manage to do these things all the time. So I don't know how, whatever. But, speaking to Terrell's other question, my understanding is that McCoy had a meeting with the Browns and the Ravens this week, is now headed to Carolina for a meeting this weekend. After that, probably going to mull his options. Some people are saying, because he left those other two and Hobson's comments on an article, maybe the Bengals are still in the mix. I don't buy it. I don't know if you have any other updates or opinions on that based on what Terrell was asking.
I buy that they're interested. I don't buy that they'll be able to get him into the door, because if he's not going to accept the money that the Browns initially offered or the Ravens initially offered, there's just no way in hell that he's going to accept whatever the Bengals are going to offer him, because it's not going to be as much, which is just something we all kind of knew. So I don't doubt that the interest is real, but I just doubt the ability for them to get him to come here, regardless of the connections between Zach Taylor, A.J. Green, who shares his agent, and Mark Duffner, who was his defensive coordinator last year. So like there's connections there, but it just comes down to the one thing that has always prohibited them from kind of closing the deal on these kinds of things.
So Terrell mentioned, he thinks, especially with the crew kind of intact again, and obviously this new system, there's a dividing line amongst fans this year. It's Dalton's going to do awesome in this new system with all these guys around him and a seemingly improved offensive line, or it's going to be a lot more of the same where, he beats the teams and plays well against the teams he's supposed to, falters in the big games, and, then, we're back to kind of square one potentially in a year or two with the Bengals looking for a new quarterback. So there's Terrell's stance. He's a bit more positive. And then we also had a text message from a 513 area code. I didn't catch the name on it, but on the other side of the coin, it's if you had to convince a fan into liking Andy Dalton in order to keep him from switching to Cleveland, could you do it? And what would you say? Asking for a friend. And I'm sure, of course, asking for a friend is quote unquote asking for a friend. So, number one, for you, I want to ask, where you reside between the Terrell camp and this text messengers camp, and also, what would you say to someone that's maybe looking to jump ship, specifically because of Andy Dalton?
Well, for starters, I think that with the right supporting cast, which could very well be the supporting cast, with the right play caller, which very well could be Zach Taylor, I think you can get near elite production at Andy Dalton. What I refuse to believe until I see it is that you can sustain that production with Andy Dalton, regardless of the supporting cast, regardless of the play callers, because at this point, he probably is who he is. And I think you can be able to get a solid year out of him. And that would be fine. I'm rooting for that, because that would mean the Bengals are doing well, but I just don't believe that it can carry on into the future for years to come. I think that it would just be wise to just say that this is probably the last contract that for him, try to get the most out of him now, realize that this is the best it's going to be, and it probably is not going to carry over from year to year, and still have the courage to move on when necessary. But yeah, it's just like, I just kind of know who he is now, and I know that he is able to produce at a high level. It's just not something that you can count on on a year-to-year basis. With the other question, I guess it depends on if you like brunettes or redheads. So if the ginger is more of your taste, then stick it here. Also, if you're a Ohio State fan, I don't believe Andy Dalton ever stuck a flag in Ohio State's midfield, like Baker Mayfield. So there's nothing that I can convince
John,
someone.
I think we may have lost your audio there. I don't know if you want to jump out and come back in and try it. I'm not sure exactly what's
let's try
going
that.
on there. At least I lost your audio. So apologies on that. But yeah, I mean, there's a big, as I mentioned, there's a big dividing line between, in Dalton camp. There's a big dividing line between what Andy Dalton can do this year and under Taylor and all of that. John, I think you're back.
Where did I lose you?
Really towards the beginning. I don't exactly know.
Oh my God, I'm rambling on, but for nobody.
No, I don't know what happened there. It was weird. You were in there, and then it's not like you froze or anything. You just kind of stopped. The sound stopped working. But yeah, hey, I've got an edit button. It's fine. So I mean, I like I said, I'm curious to know where you are in that dividing line, because I see and hear things that you say and write and all that kind of stuff. And then also I am curious because, the Cleveland bandwagon's getting pretty full. I'm curious what you would say to somebody looking to defect.
Well, okay. So I'm just kind of in the middle because I know that under the right scenario and circumstances, you can get near elite production out of Dalton. I just don't believe at this point in his career it's sustainable, because we've seen it hasn't been sustainable if the supporting cast diminishes even in the slightest, and if there's a below average play caller there that can't elevate him to what he can be under the right circumstances. So I do believe that if this is the supporting cast, if Taylor is the play caller, you are going to be able to get near elite production at Dalton as long as everybody stays healthy. I don't believe it's something that you can count on for another 4 to 5 years, aka the length of a third contract extension for him. I think they need to have the courage to look at whatever Dalton does this year, good or bad, and realize that, hey, this is probably it for us. We need to find someone who's better, who can sustain success regardless of his surrounding cast. And I don't believe they're capable of doing that, because I feel like if Dalton succeeds well, he's probably going to get another contract. But if he doesn't, the Bengals are going to suffer, but they'll find another quarterback. So it's kind of like a middle ground that you have to kind of decide what side that you're on. I'm just in the camp that, they understand who Dalton is, but they still want to maximize him because he's here now and help the team succeed. And as far as comparing, the Bengals to Cleveland, do you like redheads or brunettes? and I don't believe that Dalton ever put a flag in Ohio State's midfield. So if you're a Buckeyes fan, that's at least something that Andy Dalton's never done. So yeah. I don't really have a lot with that.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, it might have been something on my end. Mr. Sinister said we heard you, John. So I may have just had you repeat yourself, but I
had a nice dress rehearsal.
Yeah, there you go. It's the joys of live recording, and we'll get that figured out. But yeah, great stuff on that. And I will say this, and I think you kind of sort of began to touch on it, and I think that's what's something important to note. Yeah, quarterbacks in a system maybe take 2 to 3 years to be most comfortable and all of that. But I would say, especially someone looking to defect to Cleveland, I would say that this is probably the year that you will see the max you will see out of Andy Dalton, for better or for worse. And I say that because it's a quarterback-friendly system. All of the guys are back healthy. I highly doubt that the injury bug is going to hit as severely as it did last year. There seems to be a new energy in the team, and the offensive line is seemingly improved on paper. Even if it's marginally improved, it seems to be improved. So, I would say that this year is probably, you maybe want to give it one more year, because this is probably the year that you will see the most that you will have seen out of Andy Dalton. And if he can't replicate something close to the 2015 stats and confidence level that we saw, then I think that's your sign that that's definitely time to move on from him. We're going to get out of here in just a minute or two. This is Anthony Cosenza and John Sharon with the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, as well as CincyJungle.com. You can get all of our content on CincyJungle.com, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play. You can get it on the Megaphone platform as well as our YouTube channel. So subscribe to our channels. And hey, we're going to keep doing these standalone listener question episodes. So join us, submit your questions. We want to keep hearing from you. And we had a great response for this inaugural standalone episode. We've got a few more that have come our way. I don't think we'll get to all of them, but there is one, especially because it's so complimentary, John. And it was a very interesting question. It was from Thomas Mack. I think this one was via email as well. Hi, Anthony. I've been following the podcast via YouTube for a while now, as well as the Cincy Jungle website. It's my first time writing in, and I'd like to thank you, John, and the rest of the staff for the job you guys do in Bengals coverage. I love to talk Bengals football, but don't really have other fans. He's in Charleston, West Virginia, to chat at length with. The question, I'm going to try and be brief here. I feel like the theme of the offseason has been to take out insurance policies, so to speak, talking about the injuries from last year and backups forced into service. My questions are, do you agree that the offseason emphasis was on upgrading the back end of the roster? And do you think the Bengals will make more moves during and or after training camp as other teams cut players? Thanks again to you and your fellow staff for your work. If you guys would like, I'd be happy to submit a piece that further backs up my view. I've said this before, John, on some episodes recently, that I don't know if this was necessarily the strategy this year, but I think the Bengals have made it known that they think they have enough talent at the starting spots that they can compete with a lot of other teams, if not every other team. Again, I emphasize they think that, but the key for them, or a key for them, was to bolster some of these backup spots if that injury bug did hit again. I mean, they were insanely unlucky last year, but you saw when some of these guys went down, this team was nowhere near the same as it was when they started. Obviously, they were playing better teams too, but for me, I think the key to this team is that they are better prepared if those injuries hit again to remain competitive, win more games than in years past.
It's an interesting dynamic, because I do agree with you that they are more there's more comforting depth at positions this year than compared to last year, but also they also believe that they have a starting quality right tackle. So it's not like we can take their word for everything that they say, but yeah, like only 2 draft picks are projected to start, and that's pretty similar to what it's been in years past. They typically like the draft guys that don't play immediately in early, which is definitely fine, because it's hard to trust a lot of rookies starting at the same time. But also at the same time, under Marvin Lewis, you had a lot of veterans who kind of held on to their spots a lot longer, and then the lack of trust in rookies kind of diminished the team a bit. So I don't think it's tremendously different in terms of draft strategy from that sense. And also the fact that most of their free agent signings, John Miller, B.W. Webb, Kerry Wynn, at least two of those guys went signed were figured to start, and I don't think Webb is going to be the starter now that Dennard's back, but Miller definitely looks like he's going to start, and signing a free, and he's like the one free agent they sign per year that is going to start. And Webb has starting ability, but he's probably not going to start, but he had a contract that maybe could have indicated that. And I think Wynn is potentially inclined to play significant snaps as like that nickel pass rusher. So in terms of just process, I think it's not tremendously different in years past, which kind of goes along the same line. Like most of the core is still there, we're just filling out the rest of the depth. And I think that's just a good way of looking at it, where it's just improving the back end of the roster, making sure that it's going to be really tough to crack down to 53 players. You're thinking, well, this is a 6-10 team. You wouldn't assume there's a lot of talent there, but a lot of that talent was on the injury block last year, and it was unfortunate. I think they're just doing their best to make sure that if it does happen again, they're in better position to still compete towards the end of the season. And hopefully they are more healthy, and this process will pay off, whereas they're not looking to add more immediate starters through free agency in the draft, and just hopefully they can maintain health and utilize that depth to its maximum.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I don't want to sit here and say, immediately, the Bengals are a playoff team in 2019. But, that's where I balk at, the national media calling this team a 3-win team and all of that based on Andy Dalton being out last year, A.J. Green. I mean, there were a lot of significant injuries. That doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be, a 10, 11-win team this year. But, I don't see how a 6-10 team with Jeff Driscoll starting games and other players stepping in for others, I don't see how they they win 3 less games or lose 3 more games than they did last year based on all of that. Maybe they tread water, maybe they improve a game or two and that's it. But that doesn't really make much sense to me, but it is what it is. And we talked about some other national media members kind of hating on the Bengals in this week's last episode. That's going to do it for us in the we wish we could get to all of the questions. There was one from Sam Anger in the UK. There's a couple others in the live YouTube chat. There was one from Let14 in the Hall of Fame now on the Cincy Jungle comment thread. We apologize we couldn't get to those. We're going to try and get to those on some Cincy Jungle mailbag posts. We appreciate all the feedback. We're going to continue to do this, especially since you guys seem to enjoy it and submitted so many questions to us. We appreciate that. So we think we're going to make this a weekly thing, if not maybe a couple times a month and go from there. We don't know if it's going to be Fridays or not quite yet, but we'll keep you updated. We'll let you know. And we appreciate everyone's participation, the calls, the texts, everything. We appreciate all of that. You can get this show on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Spotify, on Google Play. You can get it on the Megaphone platform as well as on YouTube and everything on Cincy Jungle. Keep it to cincyjungle.com for all the news, opinions, analysis. There's still, even though things have quieted down a little bit after free agency and the draft, there's obviously still some news with Gerald McCoy and other things happening. So keep it there. Fine folks like John Sheeran, my co-host there, is putting up quality content, so check that out. Check out all the stuff at cincyjungle.com. John, any final thoughts before we cruise on out of here for the weekend?
It's Friday, folks. Go out and get a drink.
Yeah,
like I'm about to do.
I can't yet. A little early for me, but maybe later this evening I will. But enjoy your weekend, guys. Thanks, John, for popping on, and we'll see you next time.